everybody out there. Once again, my name is Bart Charles Begley, or BC Begley. It is Tuesday, February the 13th of 2023, and here are your today's news headlines. Super Bowl 2023, Patrick Mahomes comes up clutch, and the Chiefs come back to beat the Eagles. Patrick Mahomes barely made it off the field after he was tackled in the second quarter. It was a reminder that Holmes was playing Super Bowl 57 with a high ankle sprain on Sunday. He was tackled on a third down and stayed down for a while. He then limped off slowly. Trainers looked at him on the sideline while he writhed in pain. Shortly after that, though, when the Eagles kicked off a field goal to end their first half, it looked like another loss for Mahomes and a Super Bowl was coming. The Eagles led by 10 at halftime and had thoroughly outplayed the Chiefs. Eagles fans chanted MVP after their quarterback Jalen Hurts had his second touchdown run of the day. Mahomes is special, and so is this emerging Chiefs dynasty. The Chiefs, behind their injured quarterback, came back and won their second Super Bowl in 5 seasons. Mahomes threw 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, and his stunning 26-yard run set up a field goal by Harrison Buckner with 8 seconds left as the Chiefs beat the Eagles 38-35. Millions of viewers were waiting for Mahomes to come through with a game-winning drive after Philadelphia tied it with 5 minutes and 15 seconds left, and then he delivered. United States fighter jets downed 4 objects in 8 days, which is unprecedented during peacetime. A United States fighter jet shot down an unidentified object over Lake Huron on Sunday on orders from U.S. President Joe Biden. It was the 4th such downing in 8 days and the latest military strike in an extraordinary chain of events over United States airspace that Pentagon officials believe has no peacetime precedent. Part of the reason for the repeated shootdowns is a, quote, heightened alert following a spy balloon from China that emerged over U.S. airspace in late January. General Glenn Van Herk, head of NORAD and U.S. Northern Command, said in a briefing with reporters. Since then, fighter jets last week also shot down objects over Canada and Alaska. Pentagon officials said they posed no security threats, but so little was known about them that Pentagon officials were ruling nothing out, not even UFOs. Baffled pilots who shot down object said it was, quote, interfering with their sensors. The pilots of the United States Air Force F-35 fighters that were sent to intercept the mystery object over Alaska on Friday say that whatever it was that had been interfering with the sensors of their aircraft before they shot it down. 3 unidentified objects have been spotted over North America in the past 10 days. The first was a giant airship, quote, the size of 3 buses, is understood to have originated in China, although the United States and the Chinese governments disagree about its exact purpose. While the Pentagon says it was a spy balloon, China says the monster airship was a civilian craft designed to monitor weather systems. But even if that turns out to be correct, the 2 smaller objects sighted over the United States in recent days still remain unexplained. Beijing is now accusing the United States of sending balloons into its airspace. China has accused the United States of, quote, illegally flying high-altitude balloons into its airspace on more than 10 occasions since January of 2022, claims that drew an immediate rebuttal from the White House as bilateral tensions flare in the fallout from a Chinese balloon that was shot down by American fighter jets after it traversed across the entire continental United States. The accusation, which was made by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, comes less than a day after China said it was preparing to shoot down an unidentified object flying near its eastern coast. At a news conference on Monday, Chinese ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin claimed it is, quote, common for U.S. balloons to illegally enter other countries' airspace. NORAD commander does not rule out aliens as a possibility. Speaking on a conference call on Sunday, Air Force General Glenn Van Herk was asked whether the United States has ruled out the possibility that the objects that have been spotted and shot down over North America are extraterrestrial in origin. The incursions seem to become so common that President Joe Biden's administration officials have found themselves issuing private assurances that there is no evidence that they involve extraterrestrial activity. However, officials also acknowledge privately that the longer they are unable to provide a public explanation for the purveyance of these objects, the more the speculation is growing. A New York Times Pentagon correspondent, Helene Cooper, who co-wrote the article, asked about this tidbit during the presser, directing her question to NORAD Commander Van Herk. Chinese ship hits a Filipino Coast Guard ship with a laser. The Philippines has accused China of a blatant disregard and a clear violation of sovereignty, alleging that a Chinese Coast Guard ship last week directed a military-grade laser light at a Philippine Coast Guard ship in the hotly contested South China Sea, which temporarily blinded the Filipino crew on board. A statement released on Monday by the Philippine Coast Guard said the Chinese vessel, quote, illuminated the green laser light twice and, quote, also made dangerous maneuvers to block a Philippine fleet from delivering supplies to another ship that was grounded at Second Thomas Shoal, also known as the Ayungin Shoal, a disputed atoll about 120 miles off the west coast of the Philippine island of Palawan. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said at a daily briefing later on Monday that the Philippine ship had, quote, trespassed, and that without mentioning the laser, the Chinese Coast Guard responded, quote, professionally and with restraint. He added, quote, we hope the Philippines will earnestly respect China's territorial sovereignty and the maritime rights and interest in the South China Sea and avoid any actions that may lead to the expansion of the dispute and complication of the situation. The episode is the latest sign of rising tensions in the region. Just days earlier, the Philippines reinvigorated its military ties with the United States. The two countries agreed to significantly expand America's presence in the Southeast Asian archipelago as the U.S. officials grow increasingly worried about China's threat to nearby Taiwan and as the Philippines remain concerned about territorial incursions by its largest neighbor. A bolt of lightning has struck the Christ the Redeemer statue. In a jaw-dropping moment, the 100-foot statue of Jesus Christ towering over Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, was hit by lightning. The stunning scene was captured during a flash storm which hit the coast of Brazil on Friday. The bolt of flash struck the head of the statue and turned the sculpture into a godly-looking figure. The stunning scene was captured by Fernando Braga, who shared the pictures on Instagram. The recordings taken on February the 10th, 2023, show the mind-blowing pictures have since gone viral on social media. While on Instagram they have garnered more than 63,000 likes, on Twitter they've been viewed over 20 million times. Notably, the Christ the Redeemer statue is the largest depiction of Jesus in the world and stands more than 2,000 feet above Rio on top of Corcovado Hill. The statue, which was named one of the 7 wonders of the world in 2007, is made of 700 tons of reinforced concrete. The sculpture has been struck by lightning in the past. According to the BBC, way back in 2014, a bolt of lightning damaged the thumb of the iconic figure, following which it underwent restoration work. Military forces bombard Ukraine's Bakhmut as defenders brace for renewed assault. The city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine endured heavy Russian artillery fire on Monday in an apparent prelude to a major new offensive as the first anniversary of the war neared. Ukrainian defenders, who have already held out there for months, were braced for new ground attacks, Ukrainian military officials said. Positions in Bakhmut have been fortified, and only people with a military role are being allowed in, a deputy battalion commander said. Any civilians who still wanted to leave the city would have to brave the incoming fire. Bakhmut is a prime objective for Russian President Vladimir Putin, and its capture would give Russia a new foothold in the Donetsk region and a rare victory after several months of setbacks. Donetsk and Luhansk regions make up the Donbass, Ukraine's industrial heartland. Russia partially occupies it and wants to win full control. In Brussels, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said he considered the long-anticipated Russian offensive to have already started. The Russian assault on Bakhmut has been spearheaded by mercenaries of the Wagner Group, who made small but steady gains. The renewed Russian bombardments made the situation there even more acute. The United States is telling its citizens to leave Russia immediately. The United States of America has told its citizens to leave Russia immediately due to the war in Ukraine and the risk of arbitrary arrest or harassment by Russian law enforcement agencies. Quote, U.S. citizens residing or traveling in Russia should depart immediately, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow said. Quote, exercise increased caution due to the risk of wrongful detentions. Do not travel to Russia, it added. Quote, Russian security services have arrested U.S. citizens on spurious charges, singled out U.S. citizens in Russia for detention and harassment, denied them fair and transparent treatment, and convicted them in secret trials or without presenting credible evidence, the embassy said. Quote, Russian authorities arbitrarily enforce local laws against U.S. citizen religious workers and have opened questionable criminal investigations against U.S. citizens engaged in religious activity. The Kremlin said it was not the first time that U.S. citizens had been asked to leave Russia. The last such public warning was in September after President Vladimir Putin ordered a partial mobilization. The train derailment in Ohio has prompted the water utility to take precautions. A West Virginia water utility is enhancing its water treatment process as a precaution following the derailment of a train hauling chemicals that later sent up a toxic plume of smoke in Ohio. West Virginia American Water said Sunday that it's also going to install a secondary intake on the Ganodet River in case there's a need to switch to an alternative water source. The utility noted there hasn't been any change in raw water at its Ohio River intake. Quote, the health and safety of our customers is a priority, and there are currently no drinking water advisories in place for our customers, the company said in a statement. About 50 cars, including 10 that were carrying hazardous materials, derailed in a fiery crash back on February the 3rd in East Palestine, Ohio. Vinyl chloride was later released into the air from 5 of those cars before crews ignited it to get rid of the highly flammable toxic chemicals in a controlled environment, creating a dark plume of smoke that went all over the environment. Residents from nearby neighborhoods in Ohio and Pennsylvania were evacuated because of health risks from the fumes, but have since been allowed to return to their homes. The European Union is set to give $3.5 million to George Soros' Open Society Foundation. Vera Jourova, the Vice President of the European Commission, has confirmed that it is providing over $3.5 million in funding to the Open Society Foundation in order to aid its campaign efforts. The foundation was started by Hungarian billionaire George Soros, who himself is infamous for breaking the Bank of England by shorting sterling as a currency speculator in 1992. Never mind his subsequent massive political lobbying efforts. The NGO has repeatedly been accused of meddling in the affairs of various European Union nations, with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban previously denouncing the leftist philanthropist as being, quote, one of the most corrupt people in the world. Despite the reputation of its founder, The European Union has confirmed that it is in an active cooperation with the Open Society Foundation, which is set to receive over 3.3 million euro in grants from the bloc for the operation of two projects falling under the so-called, quote, Citizens, Equity, Rights, and Values program. The handover of taxpayers' cash by the European Union is remarkable, given how the Open Society Foundation already has such incredibly deep pockets thanks to its billionaire founder. Catholic bishops have condemned persecution of the Christians in Nicaragua. Bishops from around the world have condemned the heightened persecution of Christians by Nicaraguan dictator Daniel Ortega. Following last Thursday's deportation of 222 of Ortega's political opponents and the sentencing of Bishop Ronaldo Alvarez to 26 years and 4 months in prison, many bishops have raised their voices in protest of Nicaragua's escalating human rights violations. On Saturday, the president of the Latin American Bishops' Council, Peruvian Archbishop Miguel Cabarellos, condemned the, quote, unjust imprisonment of Bishop Alvarez and other priests, promising prayers for their swift liberation. Quote, in faith, we are comforted by the words of the gospel. Blessed are those who are persecuted because they live according to God's plan, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Archbishop Cabarellos wrote in a message of solidarity. Asteroid lights up the sky over the English Channel, creating a shooting star-looking effect. An asteroid has lit up the sky over the English Channel in the early morning after scientists accurately predicted its strike, which is only the 7th time that has happened. The European Space Agency said on Sunday night that the 1-meter-sized object would enter Earth's atmosphere and strike the surface around the French city of Rouen. The BBC then reported that it was seen over the English Channel, creating a stunning shooting star effect. The ESA named the small asteroid that entered Earth's atmosphere on Monday SAR 2667, adding that its prediction was a, quote, sign of the rapid advancement in global asteroid detection capabilities. The BBC reported that the International Meteor Organization, which is a Belgium-based non-profit organization, said the object would have entered about 2.5 miles from the French coast, which would create a, quote, fireball effect. The ESA's scientists have described how the previous prediction came about, explaining that the initial discovery of asteroid 2022 WJ1 came from the Catalina Sky Survey, one of the major projects that are dedicated to the discovery and follow-up of near-Earth objects, which occurred on November the 19th of 2022. They said the asteroid was first captured by Catalina's telescope, and after 4 observations over a period of about half an hour, it was reported to the Minor Planet Center. The stock market rally is likely to mark the high point for 2023, according to J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan says investors shouldn't get too comfortable with the stock market's impressive start to 2023. Quote, big picture, we believe that the equity rally that started last October and that we hoped would be driven by peaking bond yields / CPI, China reopening, and the fall of European gas prices is unlikely to get the fundamental confirmation for the next leg higher as the year progresses. Closely watched J.P. Morgan strategist Mislav Mateka wrote in a note on Monday, once the positioning recovers, Q1 is, in our view, likely to mark the high point of the market. Mateka recommends investors slash their exposure to stocks, which he says sport questionably high valuations and eye more defense areas of the market. The strategist struck a notable cautious tone on tech stocks amid their big rally out of the gate this year. Quote, these big positives are not finished, but are clearly not fresh anymore, Mateka added, and now there is some complacency setting in on multiple fronts. The strong rally across major indexes so far this year has surprised many market watchers, especially given that the Federal Reserve is hot off another interest rate hike as it continues to try and combat nagging inflation. The area has been discovered at a Mexican historical site. Archaeologists have revealed a group of structures discovered at the famed Mayan archaeological site in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, which are believed to have been part of a housing complex inhabited by the elite of the sacred city, which was founded in the 5th century AD. Archaeologist Francisco Perez Ruiz said there were no known residential groups in the area, meaning the housing complex would represent, quote, the first residential group where a ruler lived with his entire family. The area, which is known as the Chechen Viejo, is expected to be integrated in the near future into the visitor area of the archaeological site, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The newly discovered complex includes the entrance arch, the House of Snails, the House of the Moon, and the so-called Palace of the Phalluses.